Two congressmen, two resignations, and lots of suggestive chatter right now swirling in the air. Guys, welcome to the Huddle, where we have a buzzy little show for you this morning. Yes, we are going to talk about the resignations we saw last night of Eric Swalwell and Tony Gonzalez over these sort of inappropriate alleged sexual relations with underlings or harassment or assault in some cases. But this isn't over yet, even though these two guys are apparently heading for the door. I mean, there are still questions about whether we could see other expulsion votes. There are questions about who knew what and when. A lot of suggestions online right now. So people want accountability, and this story is not over. We're going to discuss it today. We're also going to talk about the White House endgame sort of coming into focus on Iran. The president said he wants to ensure Iran never has a nuclear weapon, but it actually turns out that never has a more finite timeline. You're going to want to hear about the latest ask from the US of A in these talks and what they are demanding of Iran in terms of timeline on this. We'll also talk about the president's sort of smart McDonald's DoorDash order yesterday, which was fun. He very much thrives in this stunt and venue. But that was obviously overshadowed a little bit by him attacking the Pope and posting a picture of himself depicting himself as Jesus. We'll talk about that, as well as the latest reconciliation push here on Capitol Hill and the left's civil war over Hassan Piker. That guy is bad news for Dems. I'm not going to lie. I'm excited to hear Dan's take on this. We'll get into that. And then we also have a fun segment at the end, Polymarket Tuesday, where we'll talk about some non-politics stuff for a few minutes. But first, guys, before we jump in, I have to say this morning, I know we're always drinking coffee during the show, I switched over to iced coffee for the first time this year.
This is iced coffee.
And what did you think?
Are you guys, here's the thing, are you cold brew people or more just, black coffee?
Traditional coffee, little milk.
I mean, I can't say I haven't had cold brew, but I just go straight iced coffee.
It's a lot more expensive if you go get it. It's like double the price if you get the cold brew. But
I think it's I know aficionados may disagree, but I'm with you. Like I think, I like my wine in a box. I like my iced coffee out of the container.
You do not like your wine in a box. I'm not allowing you to say that.
Right.
Yes, no.
That might be a stretch.
Now we're going to need, Sean, some cups that say the Huddle. So for our iced coffee. So
I can get you a Sean Spicer show one, at least temporarily.
I could use that. I could potentially use that. Free advertising. There you go. Speaking of advertising, Dan, it sounds like you're wearing some of your Cozy Earth gear right now.
I am. It's going to be almost 85 degrees here in New York City today, and I have slept in the Cozy Earth shorts last night. And even though, yes, I did shower this morning, I have Cozy Earth shorts on the bottom here today. And even better, I mean, this is great news for a Tuesday. There's a Cozy Earth package coming because I said last week, one of our kids took my Cozy Earth latest order for themselves, and so I had to order more. So I have a box coming, but we've talked about Mother's Day coming up. It's springtime, the weather's changing. Maybe get some lighter sheets. Get mom some pajamas. Get her a candle, or your spouse, or really just anyone, or even just as Sean likes to do, treat himself. Just get it for yourself. So go to CozyEarth.com and use our code Huddle. You get 20% off your order. Does not get any better than that. Go to CozyEarth.com. Use the code Huddle for up to 20% off.
Yeah, I was going to say, my dad's birthday is coming up in a couple of weeks. He watches the show. I'm not going to say what I'm going to order, but I might look at the BOGO thing because you got Mother's Day, my dad's birthday right around the corner. So I'm going to get shopping here pretty soon.
I'm telling you, I know I ordered both the two sleep things the other day, but the second layer I think is by far pulling away as my winner. Just as a quick update that everybody wanted to know about.
Good stuff. Okay, let's look at the day book, which is like extremely long today, Dan, who puts it together. My goodness. Okay, so Secretary of State.
Thanks a lot, Donald Trump. Yeah,
he's doing a lot today. Well, everybody's doing a lot today on the Hill as well. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Rubio is going to be hosting representatives from Israel and Lebanon in Washington for peace talks. Obviously, some concern that, Israel continued to bomb Lebanon, and Iran saying, "Oh, that was part of the deal. That can't happen." Is that like frozen right now? Are they still bombing right now? Are they bombing overnight?
Oh, there's
still
no
going,
stop
right?
from Israel.
Yeah.
Israel is just, full steam ahead.
Doing their thing over there. Okay, and on Capitol Hill, Senate Majority Leader Thune and Johnson are going to be meeting privately this week for a sit down. We'll talk more about this later on in the show, basically coming up with this plan for the second reconciliation package and how to get it passed. Senate Republicans and Democrats each are holding their weekly party lunches this afternoon, followed by their leadership news conferences around 2. I would expect a lot of questions about Iran, potentially some questions about scandal on Capitol Hill, although that mostly is in the House, but we'll be tracking that. House Republicans and Democratic leadership, they're going to huddle in their private leadership meetings as well today before votes at 1:00 at the White House across Pennsylvania Avenue. The president is going to be meeting with Speaker Johnson and NRCC Chairman Richard Hudson.
By
Sean,
the way,
any thoughts on that? What that's about?
Yeah, well, I mean,
midterms, obviously, but
well, yeah, I mean, I've talked to Richard about this. I mean, they go in from time to time to kind of update him on races and who's doing what. I think the real interesting thing about this, and it was a CNN clip, I'll play it at my show later today, is when you look where Republicans stand right now on the generic ballot, it's a net 5 in favor of them. And if you go back and look at several of the last key midterm elections, Democrats have gone in with, in many cases, double-digit leads and done very, very well. This is an interesting dynamic. Obviously, we talk a lot about where President Trump's approval rating is right now, but House Republicans actually have a net 5 favorability rating over Democrats, which I will just say it doesn't portend that we're going to win, but like this is not as bad as a lot of people look. And when you look at the size of the playing field, and that's what I think there's going to be a discussion of today, is to really get through where they need help financially. The president, we've talked all this money. This, I think, is going to, I really do think that there's a misunderstanding of what's about to happen in the midterms. I don't think it's as bad as people think.
Oh, I think hanging your hat on one poll, you need a lot more data before you could even remotely say the winds are turning. Right now, Sean, I think you.
I didn't say the winds are turning, Dan. I don't. but what I'm saying is that the prevailing narrative in Washington is the House is gone and they think they can hold the Senate. I don't buy that. When you look not just at the overall data and you go race to race, where are those key things that they have to pick up? I do think Virginia is going to be critical. And the biggest mistake, and I'll say it right now, the idea that the big Republican at large, like the machination, like not just the party, but the super PACs did not play big in Virginia is going to come back to bite them. If we lose the House by 2 or 3 seats, this is on.
Sean, today you'd lose the House by way more than 2 or 3
yeah,
seats.
I literally said this to my. I've
gone through it. The Cook folks have gone through it. I mean, right now you'd be looking at 25, 24 seats that would be gone.
I mean, we could be wrong.
Okay, Dan, just on the math alone, at best, you're talking about 35 seats. I think you can probably push it to 39 that are sort of within the 10-point thing.
Oh, wow.
To suddenly say that you can have a 25-seat majority would be a crushing.
Sean, you think the margin's only 10 right now? I think if you're in a Trump plus 17 district, you're nervous.
The challenge is it's an increasing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's not 2010 anymore.
Right,
yeah,
right.
And Dan, I think left to its own, I get it, but I also go, look, there's an X factor here, and this is what this meeting is going to be really about today: is money. How much? I mean, you got $400 million plus dollars. If you carpet bomb anybody with $10 or $20 million of outside money, you can take someone who's saintly and make them a pretty bad person.
This could make a great segment. Let's keep moving. I mean, yep. I actually would like to come back to this later in the week because James Blair, who is the deputy chief of staff, is actually stepping down from the White House stepping away for a time to go work on political stuff.
All right. I will.
There's a good conversation here to be had. But let's keep going. Okay, 3:00 after this meeting with Hudson and the speaker, the president's going to be meeting with Sean O'Brien. He's the general president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. At 4:00, he has an interview with Maria Bartiromo of Fox Business. At 5:30, he participates in a meeting with the U.S. ambassador to China, David Perdue. And then at 6:30, back on Capitol Hill, Congressman-elect Clay Fuller, the guy who's replacing Marjorie Taylor Greene, he's going to be sworn in. So that gives Johnson a little extra cushion, but just until Mikey Sherrill's replacement is sworn in a couple.
We've got a 2-day cushion.
Yeah,
of
2-day
one vote.
cushion. Okay, so let's jump in right now. We'll start with Iran here in this sort of end game we're starting to sort of look at here. So we flicked at this yesterday, but the White House, it looks like, is not done with talks, even though they sort of walked away from the discussions this weekend saying Iran was not willing to negotiate and not willing to give them what they need. There are apparently discussions, at least about discussions continuing. And we're starting to get this idea of the end game. The president has said, like I said at the top, that he wants to ensure Iran never has this nuclear weapon. But it turns out never has a timeline, and that is 20 years. The New York Times is reporting this morning that the U.S. is proposing a 20-year suspension of all nuclear activity, even as the president, again, has said he wants to make sure they can never have this nuclear weapon. I want to start there because, Sean, how is that going to play with people like Mark Levin and Lindsey Graham and Brian Kilmeade of the world? 20 years, is that enough?
No, it's not. I mean, to be honest, because we've said they can't have one. And so to say you can't have one for 20 years is essentially kicking the can down the road. I think the construct of it will matter because, again, where's the uranium? Who has control over it? One of the biggest issues with the JCPOA was inspections and whether or not we could access it. And so I think that the devil's going to be in the detail. I mean, taking Iran at its word is not going to be acceptable. So I think we'll see. But we went into this, and I think a lot of people were excited that the president was finally taking this on. So anything short of them having the capability of a nuclear weapon will be a letdown.
Do you think right now people are reading this story and in touch with the White House saying this is not good enough?
The people who, some of the people you mentioned, I mean, the Mark Levins, I'm not sure. I think there's, yes, is the answer. For the people who really care about this more from like an Israel standpoint are probably a lot more active in this. The national security type folks are probably less vocal at this point. But I also think, look, until we get back to the table, who knows?
Dan, you're smiling.
I'm just laughing.
I know he is.
You know what this thing is? Here it is, folks. MAGA, make sure MAGA's sitting down. Donald Trump's proposing the Barack Obama deal. And it is so ironic that this is where we've gone full circle. So if you haven't seen today, Gerard Baker in the Wall Street Journal, a weekly columnist, literally writes, "We're losing." And I think what you're seeing is what happened with Iraq, which is all the people that have dreamed of this mission in Iran of getting rid of the regime, ending the nuclear weapons threat, are now dealing with reality, which is it's not going to happen. You're not going to eliminate it. So we propose 20 years, they propose 5. Right. Let's say it's 10 years, right? To Sean's point, they don't want to get rid of the uranium. They're saying they're going to dilute it. So now it's a trust issue. And what is the other issue? How much cash are they going to be given? Sound familiar? This was the Obama issue, right? So the problem is the only other alternative is you're going to have to invade it with ground troops, which isn't going to happen, right? Because, I mean, John Thune here is saying, it's being reported, this has got to end, right? Because they're worried about losing the Senate. So Saudi Arabia is complaining because they need to get that oil out. And now they're worried about the Houthis shutting down the other one. So to me, what's remarkable is all of this and the end game may be to put the Barack Obama deal back together. It's unbelievable.
Well, look, I will caveat this by one quick thing. This is all speculative at this point, right?
Sure,
I mean, there's a lot of people. And I also think for Baker to come out right now in the Wall Street Journal and say, anybody who actually thought, I said it last week, I think there was wide expectation that this would be iterative at best. And so to claim 24 hours later, 48 hours later that we're losing, I still believe this blockade is brilliant. And I mean, again, does it hold? How long do people come to the table? But we're at the beginning of this process. And so for people to start hand wringing right now is a way premature.
Well, wait a second.
Wait, hold on. Since you both mentioned the Gerald Baker op-ed here, he doesn't say we're losing because there was no deal. The reason he says we're losing is because when you're winning, you, quote, don't threaten to destroy a civilization or look for scapegoats. He says it isn't too soon to offer tentative judgment on the president's biggest foreign policy action, ill-conceived, ill-planned, ill-executed, and so far failing. Sean, I'm just curious, does the president care what he thinks?
Oh, that's the house of
Do they have a
Murdoch.
relationship?
That is the house of Murdoch. Nothing gets through past the goalie in the house of Murdoch without the approval. Nothing.
Well, no, right. So Dan, meaning that Rupert knew like this was sort of
Yeah.
but God, whether does he care? I think it might annoy him, but I also think, again, I looked at it and thought like there was nothing new in it and nothing insightful. And I'm not really sure that I look to those guys for that kind of insight. So I don't know. I honestly, I think on some days, depending on, what else happened that day, it could rise to a level of annoyance, but nothing more than that.
Here's what would worry me if I were Donald Trump. When the Wall Street Journal op-ed page or the opinion pages start writing this, you are giving permission to a conversation to begin to break out. And further in that story, what he says is they still have their nuclear weapons, they still have their missile capability, and the regime is still in place. And he says that is a problem. And I think for Trump, we kind of don't give as much airtime to this because it's just an eye roll. But he still talks like it's complete victory and we're in complete control, which I don't think any serious person believes. His problem becomes if his own world starts to believe we may be losing or this is not complete victory, I seriously wonder how he handles that, because he doesn't take nuance and gray very well at all.
The president does seem to be sort of grappling with some frustration here, even as he says, we're winning. I mean, like last week it was going after Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, the Kennesaoans sort of winning at the party. And then we didn't talk about this yesterday, but there was that Sunday night attack on the Pope, where he went after him, called the Pope weak on foreign policy, said he's bad for foreign policy. And then he talked to reporters about it, said he doesn't like the Pope. He likes his brother, but he doesn't like him. And then he posts that picture of himself depicting himself as Jesus, which caused such an uproar yesterday. I wrote about this in my newsletter on Substack that, he ended up taking it down because a lot of, folks on the religious right were upset about it, including, by the way, a lot of my family who are Catholic Trump voters, by the way. But like that is very much him lashing out. I mean, Sean, like I have to wonder if he's having second thoughts about whether this was worth it at all.
It's a good question because I do wonder how much there are certain people, and I don't know, I don't have any name, but like in policy discussions that present a much rosier picture at times, like, whether it's how much revenue tax policy is going to yield, or, how quick something will bring economic development, or, how quick the trade imbalance will end. And I wonder if he's looking at some of these folks and saying, you guys told me this is going to be a lot easier, or that this was how Iran would react. Again, I will say that I think the blockade is new, how this brings people together, because it's squeezing both Iran and China in different ways, or it could. And so let's see how this thing plays out. By the end of the week, maybe 10 days. But I actually think this is the one time that that Iran may personally start feeling this economically in a way that they haven't.
Speaking of that blockade, we should note that the Wall Street Journal is reporting this morning that Saudi Arabia, even though they were a big cheerleader of this all initially, is now asking the U.S. to back off on the blockade. They're concerned about retaliation, and
they're worried. So the Saudi Arabia, right? It's a peninsula. The other strait goes right by Yemen, and the Houthis last year basically tried to shut it down because it's a similar thing. It's narrow. They have drones. They have speedboats. They have shoulder missile capability. So according to Saudi intelligence, the Iranians are trying to get the Houthis to shut down the other strait. If that happens, Saudi Arabia can't get oil out in either direction. So the Saudis are saying, hey, this can't happen. And of course, they are not unimportant in the White House.
All right, before we jump into a totally separate topic, Swalwell and Gonzales, All Family Pharmacy. Sean, how you feeling? Do you need to order any meds right now?
If you're deployed.
Probably. But again, the beautiful
I
thing
heard coughing, by the way.
There's always coughing at this time of the year. But that's the key thing, is that, getting ahead of issues and not having to worry about what's in stock, what's not in stock, going down to the local pharmacy, whether it's, Walgreens or Duane Reade or CVS, can take time. Things there's lines, there's things not in stock. And I will tell you, one of the coolest things that All Family Pharmacy has really taken on is the ability to go online to get ahead of these situations, whether it's for you, a family member, have it delivered to home. I've personally now used it, gotten it delivered. And it's really cool because you can go on, and it's not just the normal things, but Dan's mentioned a lot of people are doing the NAD plus peptides, all these things that people are using to really get into the wellness space. And the cool thing is you get all of this approved by a medical professional who makes sure that it's all good to go. And then you can get it sent directly to your home without having to wait in line or worry what's there. So go to allfamilypharmacy.com. You got to do the /huddle. So allfamilypharmacy.com/huddle and use our code huddle for 10% off. But check it out. It's really an interesting, I love the site because whether it's just your routine stuff or for you or your family, or some of the stuff that's really developed in the wellness space, allfamilypharmacy.com/huddle has it all.
All right. Thanks to All Family Pharmacy. Okay. So disgraced Congressman Eric Swalwell and Tony Gonzalez, Democrat and Republican, are out officially. They announced that they were going to be resigning or retiring early within 55 minutes of each other yesterday. This obviously comes as they were facing this potential expulsion vote with lawmakers talking about a trade. Democrats help with Republicans and Republicans help with Democrats to get these guys out. But this story is not over. A Fox News reporter was tweeting last night that a new accuser will be coming forward in Beverly Hills with her attorney today regarding Eric Swalwell. There are questions about whether lawmakers are going to try to expel both these guys anyway, just to make sure they get them out, plus maybe some other people as well, as we talked about yesterday. And there are other lawmakers, or I should say other Republicans, who are haranguing people who are close to Eric Swalwell, saying, what did you know and when did you know it? Specifically, Ruben Gallego. He's getting a lot of flack right now. But before we get to Gallego, let's just start with the expulsion vote. Just very quickly, guys, do you think that they happen now that these guys are gone, or do they decide, okay, let's not go down that slippery slope? Dan?
Unfortunately, I think they're going to back off.
You think they're going to?
They just don't want to set the precedent.
Yeah.
I think I wish they would. I wrote on Substack yesterday, any other walk of life, you'd be out.
Well, the key, Dan, I think, and this was interesting in both of their statements, they didn't give a date.
They did not. That's true.
And they said something very weaselly, which is like, I will be coordinating with the subcommittee on higher power to, it was very much like, I don't want to put a date on this. I think that if they don't get something like that, their hand will be forced. So we'll see. Because if they don't do this sooner rather than later, the House will vote. I don't honestly see the House vote actually happening because I think both of them will resign before it happens for a variety of benefit reasons. That's the other thing, by the way.
Pensions.
Dirty little secret. You resign, you keep all of that, all of your congressional benefits and your floor privileges, all these things. You get expelled rather, and that's a different game. And so I will say that that's the other little dirty secret that no one's going to talk about is Eric Swalwell will still get a congressional pension, a lot floor privileges, all of these things.
Can they vote to strip him of that?
Yes. So when you're expelled, you lose that.
Oh, it'd be both. Again,
yeah.
They should, but the precedent this is what they don't want. If sleeping with staff is the precedent to remove members of Congress, there's going to be a numbers issue.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Okay, but we gotta talk about how Republicans right now are just like.
By the way, can I just one thing that I don't think is getting lost in this is we talk about getting expelled from Congress. You have the Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, investing in Swalwell for activity that happened in New York. This guy could end up in jail, right? I mean, this Swalwell's not just got to worry about getting expelled. He's got to worry about literally going to jail.
Yeah.
And Alvin Bragg, as we might recall, is not exactly in MAGA world.
We should note on the show, because we've got to say this. Of course, Swalwell denies that all these allegations against him. So we'll put that right there. Take it for what you want and what you will. But no, let's talk about how Republicans right now, they are like a total dog with a bone when it comes to Ruben Gallego. We have an element here. Let's pull it up. Chris LaCivita, former campaign manager, co-campaign manager for the president's 2024 election. He says, only a matter of time before Oppo file drops TikTok Ruben Gallego. For those of you who are not aware, he's very close with Eric Swalwell, best friends on Capitol Hill. This is a picture of the two of them in Doha with no shirts on camels. And, you know, they're often spotted together. So Republicans are having a heyday with this. George Santos also tweeted that he had an office next to Gallego when he was serving in the House. And he said the rumors were wild. And I saw and heard, quote, plenty. So Mike Lawler, a lot of Republicans right now going after Gallego. Let's pull up Gallego's reaction when he was asked about this by reporters on Capitol Hill. I believe this is a CNN reporter who took this video and what he said.
Life, and for many, I mean, more than 20 congressmen, people that served for a long time, they had no clue. We had no clue. And look, unlike whatever's happening with Jeffrey Epstein, because like we all ask for accountability, and we'll continue to ask for accountability. Convictions deserve justice, but they led a dull life and tricked many of us into he was something he was not.
In case anybody couldn't hear that, he ended by saying he led a double life and tricked many of us into thinking he was someone he's not. I have to say, I've covered Gallego for a really long time. I've never seen him like that. He looks shell-shocked.
Because
totally
all you have to have done is watch one episode of Dateline. That guy looks so guilty. It's unbelievable. I don't know what he's more afraid of. One, what he'd covered up with respect to Swalwell or his own personal behavior. But I'm telling you, that was the hostage video equivalent of I don't want to talk to you. Because I honestly, I'm not sure what he was more afraid of. Huh?
He looks terrified.
Of course he does, because I think the idea, he went way too far. We lived a double life. I have no idea how come on. Are you serious? Like, you may not have known everything, but you had no idea that this guy, I mean, and not that I really care or believe anything that George Santos says, but this is the number of people that have come forward to make it clear that he was a player. Now, I don't know enough about Gallego, anything in his personal life or anything, but I think that like he is next on the list.
We should say again on the show, because we have to be fair and say what people are responding. Gallego has said that he knew nothing, as he said right here. He knew nothing. He called on him to resign right away, said that he's not worthy of his seat in Congress and should drop out of the race. Dan, thoughts on this?
Well, I think here's the issue. There's two, I think, things that are kind of being mixed here. One is, did people know about, again, these are alleged assaults, right? That is something where, you know, okay, did it happen? Two, were you aware of it? The second kind of issue is, which is not getting as much play, is aggressively pursuing, or let's say having relations with your staff, right? People who are underlings, who are your direct reports, who tend to be very, very young. That is a separate question. And that is where I think there are a lot of questions of, you know, Swalwell, who it says in his statement, he made mistakes, bad judgment. No one knows what that means. But
yeah, what does that mean?
Right. There are people who suspect, again, that may be what he is referring to, and he might try to argue that things were consensual. I think whether it's Ruben Gallego or, to be, you know, fair, Sean, probably other members in both parties, that dynamic on the Hill of not only members of Congress, but senior staff that I'll use the phrase prey on, very young, tend to be women, is something that it's awful. And only in almost every other walk of life, this stuff ended 20, 30, 40 years ago. But on Capitol Hill, because there's no HR department, members of Congress have sole discretion over personnel in their office.
They're not supposed to do this. It is written. I don't know.
Oh, of
exactly
course
where
not.
it's written. But they're not supposed to.
You're
Do
not
this. This is
supposed
against the
to.
rules. So
But there's no higher body to necessarily, unless an ethics complaint is filed, and we all know how slow and how long this goes. And again, because it's so prevalent, there's a mutually assured destruction going on.
Well,
So
also, I mean, like Dan, I mean, we all know this, but like the environment, right, is such that if you think about I'm sure that somebody could come up with an example, but based for the most part to your lead in here, think about this. You go to work, you work your 8 hours, whatever, in the day. And then at night it's, hey, we've got 4 receptions and a fundraiser and everybody's drinking and hanging out and going out after. I mean, that's not a normal work environment. And suddenly, so that you're interacting in a way that frankly, most environments would frown upon.
I'll go a step further. Yeah, sorry. Which is you have a lot of members of Congress whose families don't come to Washington anymore. They stay home. Most members of Congress are in group houses now because it's very expensive to have a residence in Washington. It's a very expensive city and back home. They don't want, these places are unfurnished. Some members of Congress sleep in their office, which I always found creepy and disgusting. You'd see members, I'd see them at 6:30 in the morning in pajamas going into the bathroom to brush their teeth and stuff. You're like, oh my God. But my point is a lot of them are lonely.
That's pretty popular with Republicans.
But a lot of them are lonely and they hang out in Washington Monday through Thursday.
Yeah.
And they go out and they do drink and the staff is drinking. And there are all these people who are around kissing their backsides, lobbyists, staff, everybody. This is how they get in trouble.
Dan, you're painting like a total house of cards here.
Well, I mean, look, you go back, you can go way back to, I mean, when Chuck Schumer was in the House, he lived with a guy named Sam Gagenson of the Connecticut 2nd District. There was a guy, it was a men's frat house. There were 5 Dems. New York Times did a profile of them. They called it like, the house, the Dem animal house. And these guys loved partying, going out. But also to Dan's point, I want to there's this gradation of what's going on right now, which is you've got Swalwell, who is alleged to have committed actual crimes, like engaged in non-consensual acts, right? All the way to inappropriate is maybe the other end of things. And then there's a bunch of stuff in the middle. So to Gallego's point, there's 3 things that I think Ruben Gallego is going to get asked or looked at. Number 1, did he actually know that Swalwell was creepy or doing something? And there's a lot of rumors about a lot of members that do stuff. Rumors are one thing. Rumors. Okay. Yeah. Second is, did you actually know that, to Dan's point, there was a pursuit of non-consensual activity, especially with staff, because that's a whole separate category. And then third is, did you personally engage in any of this? And that's where, like, some of these members, I think that it will be interesting to see, do we see a lot more exposure of members in the next, say, 10 to 20 days? Because while they're back here, that's when this stuff seems to blow up. And I also think that what I found fascinating about the Swalwell thing is, remember, the guy's been in Congress 13 years, right? Yeah. A lot of this behavior that's alleged has occurred over a period of time. The notion that it all crescendoed at once was interesting.
I'll mention something. I want to mention something.
Lost.
So Dan and I were actually texting about this and how hard it is to report on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I covered the Hill for a decade, and I did a number of stories that actually led to lawmakers resigning because of, like their interactions with staff or whatever, like sending pictures or whatever. But that it's really hard to nail this stuff down because of certain like journalism, ethics and standards. We can't just report rumors. You know what I mean? And that is, if I could report every rumor I heard, my goodness, I would have a lot of Substack subscribers right now, but I'd probably be in a lot of lawsuits too. And so the rule that I was always told was like, someone has to go on record and tell you this happened, or that they were the person that it happened to them, or you have to have evidence, video or picture evidence. And now we're actually seeing some, by the way, video of Swalwell online. My understanding is that there's even more, and that could be coming out pretty soon.
And you have to remember too, because there's been these kind of like, some of the swirl online is that this was done by like opponents, like political opponents, right, of Swalwell. I believe this was done by Swalwell's own staff, who was horrified that he may actually be the Democratic nominee to be the governor of California and win. And they collectively said, oh my God, we have to come forward and stop this man. So that is what's remarkable, is it's his own people, his own staff,
For sure.
who moved forward to say enough. And that is courageous. Again, it may be Swalwell is innocent, but I give credit to someone who worked for a member of Congress and comes forward and says, I was treated this way.
By the way, can we just one quick thing on California? I will be interested to see, is this with Katie Porter's had these rumors before, not in a sexual way, but in an abusive way. If she, I mean, the question is now, does it turn to her about, if you're Tom Steyer, you're like, hey, let me go show you some Katie Porter oppo.
One last thought on this. We got to move on, but we should also note how the leadership on both sides handled this. And I mentioned this yesterday in the conversation. I think you had jumped by then, Sean. But in a conversation with Dan, it used to be that the leadership sort of policed these things and they would tell people to get out when there were rumors that they thought were probably correct and accurate. They would sort of push people out. And now you have the members sort of taking things into their own hands to try to pressure these guys to get out. It turns out it was Nancy Pelosi who told Swalwell he needs to step. Jeffries, called on him to get out of the race in California, but it was Pelosi who called him and was like, you got to get out of Congress because our members can't vote on this. It's bad for the membership. Johnson, on the other hand, you have with Gonzalez, who actually, admitted eventually to what happened with this woman who ended up dying. He never called on Gonzalez to step aside either. So you have two leaderships who are like, we're not going to go there. And obviously the margin has a lot to do with that, but still interesting.
It has everything to do with it.
Yes, of course. Okay, let's talk about Reconciliation 2.0. But before we go to 2.0, let's talk about 1.0, because the president yesterday ordered DoorDash from McDonald's. Yesterday, he had it delivered by a woman who was a grandmother. Actually ended up tipping her, it sounds like $100 after a reporter asked if they are good tippers. It's a really funny video. Let's pull that up right now.
Yeah, nice to see you.
Nice to meet you. I have your DoorDash order for you, Mr. President.
Oh, that's very nice. Look at this. The reason for this is the fact that I heard you picked up an extra $11,000 because the tax bill was so big. The refund was the biggest you've ever had. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, I saved over $11,000.
It's really, we call it the great big beautiful bill. We should call it the great big beautiful tax cut bill because it's tremendous amounts.
Let's jump out of that.
Are the White House good too?
This is great. We should see the White House doing more.
This was fantastic. But this is what we should be talking about. Like, this is a huge winner. There's no tax on tips. A huge winner in the big beautiful bill. This is what Republicans should be talking about. It was an unbelievable. As a big fan of stunts, this is exactly what we should be doing. But it makes people remind what policy does to impact their lives. This is what we should be doing. This is why. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't know why we haven't done it sooner. Right?
Because you've started a war.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say, Dan, a lot of people didn't.
I knew there was something, Dan, and I was like, "What is it?"
It wasn't just the war; it was the whole thing with the Pope and the photo of him depicting himself as Jesus. That dominated the first half of yesterday.
No. Well, what I mean by this, just to be clear, not to be smug, is like we passed this bill. What, 9 months ago? Like, we should be out there every day doing something like this. But this was brilliant. It hit home, and it's unfortunate that it is overshadowed because this is the kind of thing that takes policy that happens in Washington, D.C. and makes it very real for the average American. That woman, her story, and the president was alluding to it as he talked about it. Her husband has cancer. She's been door dashing. She's become the DoorDash grandma that was on her shirt, like, to make extra money. And she's gotten $11,000 in tips, really benefited her financially because of this tax policy. So these are the ways in which policies we should be out there selling them. And so kudos for that. Do more.
Well,
okay, let's talk about
the issue though, because you got to say it because it's in Bloomberg today. More and more Uber and DoorDash drivers are refusing long deliveries because of gas prices. I mean, so not only are we at war that Trump proactively started, but now all the fallout is dominating the headlines. And so I agree with you, Sean. It's one of those, it's like on the shutdown. You were too busy doing other stuff to talk about, TSA lines. It's amazing. Amazing.
Let's talk about Reconciliation 2.0 very quickly, because you'll recall this was before we took the break for Easter, but a lot of House members, including the Speaker himself, came out and called this idea of spinning off ICE in CBP garbage. This sort of
a joke.
Yeah, like that we're going to pass a reconciliation bill to fund what should be done in the standard appropriations process. That it sets a bad precedent. And yet now, the president has sort of weighed in. Johnson is getting on board, and him and Thune are getting ready to sort of jam the House, right? The Senate is putting together this bill this week. It's supposed to be very narrow. They're saying it's going to be not just a skinny bill that focuses only on CBP and ICE, but that it's a, quote, anorexic bill is what John Thune called it yesterday. We're not adding anything else. We're not gobbing it up with a bunch of other policy riders or red meat. Sean, how likely is it that they can protect this bill and keep it narrow?
I think the Senate's definition of anorexic is very different than anyone else's. The Senate doesn't know what anorexic looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's a joke. Of all places to say anorexic, the Senate is kind of a.
You mean they're going to make it super fat?
Yeah, they're. I mean, like it'll be at best a chubby bill.
Chubby bill.
Like they don't know what anorexic looks like in the Senate. I think the hard part when you do this is that every lobbyist in town looks at the train leaving the station and says, here's what we can attach. And by the way, part of the other discussion and why they're feeling that they can make something quasi anorexic is because they're saying that the way that this is constructed, meaning that it's already been through the budget process, they don't have to find the same offsets, which is kind of a cute by half thing. Yeah. But that would allow them to limit the offsets in there, which would probably hamper a lot of additional people from trying to hang little ornaments on this Christmas tree.
Now we'll see what the parliamentarian says about that. We don't know yet if the parliamentarian, accepts that logic, and if not, they might have to go back to the drawing board to find offsets for this. So, and by the way, you also have a bunch of conservative members out there saying they want to add like military spending, other GOP priorities, potentially GOP election bill type stuff. So we'll see. I'm also curious because James Blair, who oversaw sort of ledge affairs for a long time and helped the lawmakers pass Reconciliation Bill 1.0, he's now, like we said, he's leaving. And so the president himself might have to, lean in and knock some heads, which I'm sure he will do if he needs to.
I think that's the thing. I mean, it's the same thing we said 6 weeks or whatever, 2 months ago when this started. Trump's the only one who can end it because he's the only one who can referee his own conference.
And by the way, he doesn't love to be the referee. You can see it. He doesn't like to do that all the time.
Of course, he hates it because it's too small for him. And so, but that is the reality is I do not think they're going to solve this on their own. It's going to have to be Trump or Susie or somebody saying like, gosh darn it, you got to do this and move on.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Hasan Piker. This is like just super fascinating. So Democrats, they're eager to find their Joe Rogan of the left, right? And they are cozying up to this guy who is, frankly, probably going to cripple them in the long run. This is a socialist, Hasan Piker. He's this controversial Twitch streamer who has millions of followers, yes, including those young followers that Democrats are desperate to reach right now and get out to vote for them. But this guy has some like batty views. I mean, he apparently suggested America deserves 9/11, has expressed sympathy for the man who killed the United Healthcare executive a year or so ago. He's now saying he'd rather see Hamas rule rather than Israel rule. He just, I guess there were tweets. I saw tweets about this morning. He said the biggest terrorists internationally are actually Republicans. Dan, like, what gives? Like, why would Democrats cozy up to this guy? Like, isn't this going to be problematic?
No, I mean, look, I think what's problematic for both Democrats and for Republicans is we're living in an era now of entertainers that are all over the place. And so if you have a big audience, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube, whether you're, Tucker Carlson or Nick Fuentes or Hasan Piker, candidates are looking to try to find and reach voters that they can't reach in traditional ways. And so I think on some level, Hasan Piker now kind of he is feeling the moment. He seems to be very content to go with his kind of newfound celebrity and talk to the Pod Save America guys. I think we have a clip of when he was speaking to John Favreau and talked about the issue of voting for Hamas if they were on the ballot, so to speak, versus Israel. Let's see if we can bring that up here.
Yeah.
So my question is, when you say Hamas is 1,000 times better, do you actually mean that? Or is that a rhetorical move or like a solidarity signal? Like what?
I mean, it's all of the above. I do mean it. I think it's a rhetorical move because it frustrates a lot of people. I've also said I'm a harm reduction voter. I'm a lesser evil voter, and therefore I would vote for Hamas over Israel every single time.
Yeah, and like he also has talked about not voting if Gavin Newsom were the nominee for the Democratic Party in 28, that he would vote for a third party. I think, Rachel, you flirt with people like this, you're playing with fire. And again, I think it's the same thing with the right, with Nick Fuentes and other people like that. To me, the good news is the more Hassan Piker talks, the more he's disqualifying himself. I think it's going to get to the point where even kind of long shot Democrats, people who are, trade in the fringes, will say it is not worth engaging with someone who keeps putting his foot in his mouth with statements that are just so unacceptable to 90% of this country. So, the gravity is taking care of itself here.
You know what I find, though? It's so interesting how the two sides deal with this. So Nick Fuentes went on Tucker and was largely, and it was a massive controversy about platforming the guy or not. And frankly, I don't like, I'm a pretty big free speech guy, but I also feel like at some point that same free speech, you can say, great, I don't like you pay the consequences for it. Right. Yeah. The interesting thing is the Pod Save America guys. And I just want to be clear. I'm in favor of this because if somebody's really bad and crazy, like I think the more you expose them, that's actually better.
Yeah. Confront them. I agree.
Right. It's not just confronting them, but I think part of it is if somebody's saying crazy stuff, instead of just making an accusation, I am a believer that, okay, show me how crazy they are. And then that almost does a better job than I, as a viewer, as a citizen, as a voter, get to say, wow, that's a disqualified person. Like I don't want them around, but I don't like to take everybody's word for whatever. So I say that as my preamble, just to say I'm fine with it. But I find the interesting that the guys at Pod Save America platformed this guy, Hassan Piker, and nobody said a damn thing about it.
Oh, that's not true. Yeah, that's because you're not on Blue Sky. I put this topic on here because the left's gone nuts. You have Mike Nellis and others saying this is disqualifying. Are we really defending this guy? And others saying what you just said, Sean, which is like, hey, give him oxygen. And then you have the candidate in Michigan, the doctor, Abdul
El-Sayed.
El-Sayed,
who campaigned with him. And I think this is, there is a little civil war going on in the Democratic Party, which is what about, the party's become fairly anti-Israel. To what extent are these more extreme voices given credibility? Are you going to engage with them? Do you call them out if you engage with them, or do you kind of respectfully listen? I think this has exploded on the left. It is a big issue, and more, I will say this. I'm not going to say names because one of them, it was an off-the-record conversation. But 2028ers at Sharpton's event, when the press got a hold of them, were trying to ask about Hassan Piker. This is going to be a huge issue anytime a microphone is shoved in front of a Democrat.
Speaking of which, see, let me just flag this. The Republican Jewish Coalition this morning is going after John Ossoff, tying him to Hassan Piker because saying your silence on this matter is disqualifying. So it's already happening in real time where Republicans are taking this, even if someone wasn't on the show or wasn't.
They should. I mean, look,
it's going to be an issue. Yeah.
The thing that I found interesting about Abdul El-Sayed, this Michigan Senate candidate last week, he got asked to comment on Hassan Piker.
He campaigned with them.
He said, my job isn't to call him out or something. I think, frankly, the funny thing is, to me, it was such an easy question, which is to say, look, the guy's got a big audience. I'm running. Again, I don't agree with this, but from how I would have answered it, if I were going to go on the show, I'd say, hey, look, obviously, America did not deserve 9/11. That's pretty obvious. I don't disagree with that. I find that kind of conversation abhorrent, but he's got an audience that reaches a lot of people that I want to reach to get about issues that matter to me. But the idea that he wouldn't even refuse to say that that 9/11 was deserved by it was. I don't. That to me was more disqualifying than going on Hassan Piker. The idea that you can't denounce the idea that we didn't deserve 9/11 in America. Alyssa Slotkin, Democrat sitting senator, did a fantastic job of actually saying the guy says abhorrent things. He attacks me personally. Yeah, I'm not going on a show. He actually answered it really well.
Yeah, I think what's going to be fascinating in 28 is both parties are going to try to reach new voters through these people, and there's risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting, something to watch. Okay, very quickly, because we don't have a ton of time. We're going to do some quick Polymarket stuff. So let's pull up, we got a couple politics ones and then some fun ones too. So let's pull up the first one. Here we go. California governor's election winner. Okay, so people think Tom Steyer has a 58% chance of winning. Who's the next one? I can't read that.
Matt Mahan.
Matt Mahan, the mayor.
That's huge. I mean, Steyer has a huge advantage here. From what people
I think it's the money issue.
Well, it's the money and it's the Katie Porter. I mean, because look, she's got the interesting thing about this is the more that people focus on behavior, Katie Porter's next in the barrel.
Well, look, I mean, I know Tom Steyer from when I raised money. I've worked out of his office. Anytime you run a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund, you make a lot of different investments and deal with a lot of interesting people. I mean, both sides have, what's the Godfather expression? Dirt under the fingernails.
But the one thing that's interesting is I interviewed when I was out in California this weekend, both Chad Bianco, the sheriff, the Riverside sheriff, and Steve Hilton. And I asked them both the same question, which is, you guys both talk about how you can win and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is California is massive in terms of media markets and geography. How are you going to have the funds necessary? And they both gave me some very nice, well, we're going to raise the money and da-da-da. But Tom Steyer has it. He doesn't have to raise it. And that's a massive, massive advantage.
For sure.
That when you talk about reaching an audience of that size, and like I said, I mean, just the number of media markets that are very expensive in California alone.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And so I think that this makes sense. I look at this and I go, it makes sense to me. The one thing that's interesting, and I'm going to highlight this on my show on Friday when I have the candidates on, is, so I mentioned this real quickly. The Republican sort of wish was that that Bianco and Steve Hilton would both kind of squeeze in at 12, 13, 14%, and we'd have a Republican runoff and Christmas would be amazing. I think that the interesting dynamic there is Steve Hilton went into the California convention with Donald Trump's endorsement. You need to get 60% of delegates to get the California party's endorsement. Okay. Chad Bianco beat Hilton at the convention and came 4 points short of actually getting the entire. Now, neither candidate's getting the endorsement, but this is going to be a bigger race on the Republican side than most people believed. I mean, Bianco's clearly got the grassroots support. Hilton has the big endorsements, but I think this is a very interesting dynamic that's playing out. Hilton, I think, was assumed to be the favorite after Donald Trump's endorsement. I'm not so sure that's the case.
The thing that's most fascinating to me is that after Eric Swalwell dropped out, we were talking about this yesterday. Who's going to get his votes? It seems like most people here obviously think it's going to be Steyer because Katie Porter. I mean,
polling data shows Porter.
If you're listening to the show on this chart, people think she only has a 13% chance of being governor, and so they don't think she's going to get those votes. Which is
data shows that his voters go 2-1 to her. At least it did up until this weekend.
I don't know.
Yep.
Okay, let's bring another one up here. Okay, U.S. and Iran permanent peace deal by. Oh, this is interesting. People think there's a 14% chance that we will have a peace deal with Iran by April 22nd. People think there's a 28% chance that it'll happen by the 30th of April, a 47% chance of happening by basically end of Memorial Day, May 31st, and a 60% chance by June 30th. I will say, I don't think we're going to see one at all, but that's me.
Really?
Yeah, by the way, the funny thing about the way the question is phrased, permanent peace deal. After the conversation that we had, I think you might get a 2-year deal. I would say this. I would put my money down closer to June 30th right now. But even then, I'm not so sure I'd be willing to put money on anything that says permanent.
Yeah, no kidding.
Permanent in Iran. No.
Yeah, I mean, they're just not going to go for the weapons thing. They're getting rid of the uranium. So, okay, which party will win the Senate in 2026? Okay, well, Dan, you must be liking this. People think Democrats,
but I don't buy this one.
You don't buy it.
No,
okay,
I'm with Dan. I'll take right now, folks. Again, I do not take financial or medical advice from me or the show, but I think the smart money is on Republicans right now.
I'd say 60-40 Republicans keep the Senate right now, maybe 55-45, something. I just don't see the fourth. I know Alaska, the polls show Mary, what's her name, leading, but that makes me nervous.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm with you. 60-40. I think Republicans hold. But for those of you who are listening and not watching, it says which party will win the Senate in 2026. Traders think Democrats have a 56% chance of taking the Senate, and Republicans only 45.
And look at the trajectory. It's growing on the Democratic side. It's kind of holding firm on the Republican side. I'll be interested to see in a couple of weeks if that blue line, the Democratic Party trajectory upwards, starts coming down. Anyway,
I don't think so. Not as long as the Iran war is continuing.
Yeah,
I don't think
agree
so.
about that.
Okay. Oh no, you guys have to take the lead on this one.
Oh, this is the NBA playoffs start tonight. The play-in here today, tomorrow, and Thursday before the first round starts this weekend. Your NBA champion, the Oklahoma City Thunder, 42% think will win, followed by the San Antonio Spurs, 15.2. Some team from Boston, 12.2, and then Denver. I am still looking for my New York Knicks. Don't see them on here right now, but hope springs eternal.
Take the smart money's on the Celtics, man.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a question? The Denver Nuggets?
Yeah, gold.
Gold Nuggets? Oh, okay. Gold.
Yep.
That's a weird name. Has that always been the name? That's kind of lame.
No, they started as the Chicken Tenders and then got.
All right, Sean, would you go Oklahoma City, San Antonio, or the Field? I think I'd probably go Oklahoma City or San Antonio.
Yeah, I think right now, I mean, if I had to play with my money, I'd say Oklahoma. But I do think the Celtics are underestimated. I'm telling you, they've been playing this way all season, and they come through big when it matters. Anyway, I know we got some questions, by the way.
Yeah, let's take some questions. Okay, super chat right now. If the U.S. blocks the strait, what's to stop China from blocking the Taiwan Strait, where their Navy can actually defend against the U.S. Navy because it's so close to their shores?
I wouldn't just stop there. I mean, why would other areas not do this around the world? It's a problem. It's a problem.
Well, I mean, there's a big difference. I think it's an interesting question, but you do that, and there's a big difference. And I will say that we go to that phase and start buying a lot more gold and silver. Because
a lot more nuggets.
No. You might want to get some MREs, and like we're getting to some pretty scary stuff if they start blocking the Strait of Taiwan. Oof. And go into the South China Sea.
Okay, let's take another one. Okay, let's watch TV 957. Another super chat. Sean, question for you. Alternative history. Would George H.W. Bush have won in the 1992 presidential election had it not been for Ross Perot? And don't forget to buy Trump 2.0 by our very own Sean Spicer. Look at that.
Wow. I'm not sure how we're related. I do think.
Really?
I'm kidding. I just appreciate the plug of, wow, look at that. I have a copy right here. So I do think that he would have won without Ross Perot. I think Ross Perot spoiled it. By the way, the funny thing is, I think one of the biggest, as a student of history, which is why I love Trump 2.0, because it's truly about why this is a significant and historical, regardless of how you view Trump, to understand the political significance of this, is that I think that one of the biggest historical sort of phenomena that exists, if Ross Perot hadn't dropped out and then gotten back in, like before the dropout, his campaign, I think would have been much different. But the whole dropout and the wedding thing with his daughter, I mean, like there was so many fascinating ups and downs that I think going back at different points and trying to figure out how you could reconstruct that race is I mean, to me, a fascinating parlor game. But I think it's a great question. And yes, he would have won And also, had the economy been, the whole scanner thing was such a misunderstanding of what was actually happening in that grocery store. And if Bush had gotten a couple more months of that economy on the glide path that it was on, he would have won as well.
I definitely wasn't paying attention. I was 3. Okay, let's take another question. Okay, given Iran's oil cannot freely sail to China due to the blockade, do you think the summit in China gets delayed again or postponed indefinitely? I can't imagine China rolling out the red carpet for Trump under current conditions.
I can't imagine Trump being there in general if this is still going on. I mean, it would just be such a look. I don't think it's a coincidence he's meeting with David Perdue, our ambassador to China today. I imagine, Sean, you flagged this, last week. China's involvement and whether there's a trade for something is something to keep an eye out here.
Look, I'll say this, Dan, you're right. I mean, like the one story that we should, tomorrow talk about is what we know coming out of this meeting with Perdue. Dan's right on this. Like, what is Perdue just coming to huddle with him? Does he have a message from behind the scenes? Like, that's generally where they send a message back via diplomatic channels to say, would you tell the president that we're looking forward to this meeting, but blah, 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 or it would be nice if the following could occur. Those are those back channel things that generally happen ahead of, key state visits, bilateral meetings, etc. I'm intrigued by this because I can make a case either way. And this is why the David Perdue visit today is key. Are they saying, we're looking forward to the meeting, we still think it should happen because we've got some serious issues to work out? Or, hey, under the current circumstances, it's not appropriate that we meet? But you could make this case either way, that what he's carrying in his diplomatic pouch goes one way or the other.
It's pretty risky, though, if he goes and they don't have some sort of agreement or plan, and he just comes back empty-handed. Like, that looks bad, doesn't? I mean, I would think.
To state the obvious, to go there in the middle of a war when China's kind of on the other side. I mean, you're going to ask them.
But isn't that what you want, though? Is it you want to have those conversations?
I mean, maybe, but you're going to say you're providing shoulder-fired rockets and you're providing money and okay. Yep. If the Chinese say, yep. And you, to Rachel's point, you walk out with nothing. You're now
wait, just to be clear, walking out with nothing. You're right now instituting a blockade that is financially impacting them. So they equally want to say,
sure,
excuse me, can we talk to you about your little blockade?
But here's the thing, Sean, in a battle of wills between a totalitarian regime and a democracy, in the short run, here's the thing, Sean, if he doesn't win, now Trump looks small. You went to China, the Chinese told you to go pound sand. You're still kind of waffling around in Iran. For a guy whose image is strength and dominance, oh boy.
Maybe he'll have some sort of escalation.
I will say this, there's two factors in there. One is, I do think that if you're starting to, I get the point when you're a dictator, you have a little bit more control over your people and how the economy is affecting them.
Everything.
That's right. Fair point. But I will say that this financially and economically is going to impact them big. So coming back without anything, but I will say this is where this David Perdue meeting matters. Is he coming there saying, under the circumstances, unless this blockade, we have a way to get oil to China, they don't want to meet. But Xi Jinping is not going to have Trump over there for all the pomp and circumstance that they want without they can't equally afford a bad meeting. So let's just be clear. I mean, both sides have an interest in making sure that if they meet, it goes well.
Yeah. All right, guys, we are past time. Sean, what do you have coming up on your show today?
Brand new polling out of Signal, especially on Iran, how it's impacting. So we're going to break that all down tonight. How everything is playing economically. They've just got out of the field with a brand new poll. They're bringing it to us to play tonight. So we'll do that. Plus so much in the news that we will break down domestically here as well.
All right, guys. Well, we will see you tomorrow at 8:30. Thanks for joining on The Huddle.